Executive orders remove the critical layer of democratic accountability inherent in the legislative process. Unlike bills passed by Congress, the executive orders are often crafted behind closed doors by a narrow circle of advisors and agency staff with limited opportunity for public input or bipartisan oversight. This lack of transparency means controversial or harmful policies can be implemented without meaningful resistance until they're already enacted. As the internal executive branch process for drafting and vetting executive orders is often less transparent and involves less public input compared to the legislative or formal rulemaking process. The secrecy has been weaponized. For instance, the Trump administration used executive orders to roll back DEI initiatives, reduce civil rights protections, and target sanctuary cities, all without congressional approval. Many of these actions were carried out swiftly and in secret, sparking legal challenges from civil rights groups and states across the country. The Obama, Trump, and Biden administration have each at times used executive orders to bypass congressional gridlock. However, the use of executive power to address legislative inaction undermines the foundational principles of representative democracy. The consequences ripple across institutions. Congress loses incentive to legislate, further atrophying its role. And for all of these reasons, we urge neg ballot.
All right. I'll begin my constructive speech for the pro side, and I'm the first speaker for the AF team. And is everybody ready? Okay, now time to begin on my first word. And I'll read in 3, 2, 1. Contention 1. Executive orders enable fast re-entry into global agreements. Warrant 1. Executive orders let the president bypass congressional gridlock and immediately rejoin international frameworks vital during global crises. When the U.S. withdrew from global pacts with the Paris Climate Agreement and World Health Organization, the world lost a critical leader. But on his first day in office, President Biden used EOs to rejoin both. These actions restored funding for pandemic response and climate cooperation without waiting for Congress. Warrant 2. EOs ensure U.S. engagement even when domestic politics are polarized. Under divided government, legislation stalls, but executive orders act as a backstop, rapidly reversing isolationist decisions. During the Trump era, the U.S. entered key global partnerships. Without the ability to restore those ties through EOs, the damage could have lasted years. Impact is that delay cost lives. According to Atlanta, over 1 million COVID-19 deaths were preventable with better global vaccine access. By rejoining the World Health Organization through executive orders, the U.S. helped fund vaccine equity like programs like COVAX. Climate-wise, the World Health Organization predicts 250,000 annual deaths from heat stress, malnutrition, and malaria by 2050. The World Bank adds that 132 million people could fall into poverty without urgent climate action. EOs that reconnect the U.S. to climate leadership are life-saving. Contention 2. Executive orders align the U.S. with global norms and soft law. Warrant 1. Many global standards like the UN Sustainable Development Goals or OECD AI principles aren't legally binding, but still shape global cooperation. Since Congress rarely acts on them, executive orders let the U.S. uphold these norms. For example, EO 140A on climate justice aligned the U.S. federal action with SDG 13 on climate and SDG 10 on inequality, even without new legislation. Warrant 2. EOs keep the U.S. current in fast-moving areas like AI, health equity, and digital access. Congress moves slowly, but EOs can act fast. In 2023, the EO on AI governance brought U.S. policy in line with G7 and OECD standards. EOs also promote broadband equity, aligning with SDG goals for education and innovation. As there have been no congressional movement on digital equity, AI governance, or SDG-aligned poverty targets, even as the UN warns of collapse. Without EO, US leadership in these areas simply would not exist. Impact is that without EO-driven alignment, global progress collapses. Then once the failure to meet SDG targets will leave 575 million people in extreme poverty in 2030. The World Health Organization links policy and actions to millions of avoidable deaths. Executive orders allow the U.S. to stay aligned with these goals, accelerating progress on health, poverty, and education, especially when Congress won't act. Our third and last contention is that executive orders signal diplomatic reliability to allies. Warrant 1. EOs give allies assurance that the U.S. will act, not just talk. Global partnerships depend on consistency. When the U.S. implements NATO cyber defense protocols or G7 climate commitments via EO, it shows leadership. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, these actions encourage allies to invest in shared defense, disaster relief, and development. Warrant 2. Without EOs, U.S. leadership will become unreliable. If the U.S. suddenly pulls back to the congressional deadlock, alliances weaken. The Brookings Institution warns that coalitions like NATO depend on day-to-day consistency, which EOs provide. Without them, countries may militarize alone, undermining peace efforts. Impact is that alliance collapse leads to war, displacement, and poverty. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute finds that failed alliances lead to civil conflict and regional wars, killing over 100,000 civilians per year and displacing millions. And that is why I urge an Afghan. Thank you.
Okay, are you ready for cross?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, just before we start, can I take the first question?
Go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. Time will start in 3, 2, 1. So your entire C1 is about fast entry into international frameworks, correct?
Yes.
And
global
you state
agreements.
you state that your impact is linked in through the Paris Health Climate Agreement, correct?
That's just an example.
Correct, but your impact was saving 250 and then 132 million people from climate destruction, correct?
No, we're saying that's examples, right? That's not like entire impact. We're saying EOs reconnect the US to climate leadership. And then that's just an example of how US has like saved many lives.
Okay,
And may I have
do you have another example of US using executive orders to link into climate goals? Because the Paris Health Climate Agreement was pulled out of by Trump through an executive order, showing how a flip-flop between presidencies is bad because of EOs. Do you have another example or no?
our example was that President Biden used EOs to rejoin both.
Okay, well,
That was
they're,
our
they're
claim.
still pulled out of the Paris Agreement. So are they or are they not?
No, we stated in our constructive on his first day in office, President Biden used EOs to rejoin both, and these actions restored funding for pandemic response and climate cooperation without waiting for Congress. That is what we stated.
Oh,
And may I have a question, by the way?
yeah, you can take a question.
So you said EOC 9066, that's like 80 years ago, is that correct?
Around, yeah. I don't think it was, yeah, around that time frame. Yeah.
So do you still think that the legal system is still the same after 80 years?
So in what aspect? What aspect of the legal system?
Like in all aspects, like would you say it's remained unchanged? Like the legal system, how like the checks and balances of
So, in fact, I believe that it has not remained the same. It's in fact gotten worse because the fact of the matter is, after EO, it's clogged up the courts, and there's been less checks and balances throughout the history as U.S. history has gone on. We've seen less checks, more abusive EOs, and more legal uncertainty and instability. Can I take a question?
Oh yeah, you have a question.
Okay, so can you provide like just the link chain between your C3 of executive orders and then collapse and war, like alliance collapse?
Yeah, we're saying executive orders signal diplomatic reliability to allies because we have evidence showing that if you want to remain in touch with the allies, that requires day-to-day responses, not like months of delay from congressional gridlock.
So you're basically saying that Congress is too slow to act and executive orders are pretty much the only way to respond quickly, or one of the key
Not the
ways?
only way. We're saying that it's essential for for executive orders to be there in order to maintain a consistent relationship.
Okay.
And may I have a question?
Yeah, you can take a question.
Wait, you stated something about Trump travel bans, but didn't Congress literally like take down part of it?
Okay, so the problem is not whether Congress took it down. The problem is that it already caused harm, and in the resolution, it's on balance, which shows that it's harmful. But that's time for cross. My partner and I will answer more in depth as the round goes on.
Right.
Opponents, just a
Thank
quick question. So my computer cut out a little bit, so I only heard like your info in your second connection, but can you like restate your topic? Like just the connection name again?
For C2,
Yeah, C2.
yeah, it's executive orders are prone to abuse, legal uncertainty, and instability.
EOs are prone to abuse,
Yeah, legal uncertainty
are prone to legal uncertainty and abuse.
and instability.
Uh, okay. Thank
All
you.
right. Okay. Time, prep time will begin in 3, 2, 1. This will be 2 minutes. All right, time will start now. Okay, Judge, I ended time prematurely. I have 15 seconds left of that. All right. So, starting on their case, time will begin in three, two, one, start. Now let's look at their first contention. Their first contention is aligning with global frameworks and promoting U.S. leadership. However, we tell you that executive orders, the nature of them, directly undermines the consistency that they talk about. They say that it signals a consistent relationship to partners. However, this could not be more untrue. Obama joined the Paris Climate Agreement, and guess what? 4 years later, Trump revokes it. Then Biden comes in, reinstates the U.S. into the Global Climate Agreement. Then, as Trump enters his second term, he pulls out of both the Paris Climate Agreement and the WHO. None of their impacts from the WHO or Paris Climate Agreement can materialize, at least in the next 4 years. So we went on time prime seeing that all of our impacts have already materialized and are showing a dangerous trend of democratic erosion. For these reasons, you can't say that EOs signal a consistent commitment because they change every 4 years. They're a pendulum swing without any public input. Congress is a preferable way to make treaties. The Constitution of the United States says that the Senate will have the power to make and ratify treaties with other nations and global frameworks. Going without any congressional action and public input is dangerous because then it can risk entangling the U.S. into conflicts and involvements that the public doesn't want in. And a unilateral action by the president behind closed doors that is not subject to nearly the amount of media scrutiny as congressional legislation is ultimately dangerous. And they talk about consistency. However, this couldn't be farther from the truth. We tell you that presidents constantly flip-flop on executive orders, and if we are to rely on executive orders for being our global framework, this is anything but a consistent commitment to executive orders. However, let's talk about the resolution. We say that you should prefer impacts that have already materialized because the resolution says on balance, the benefits have outweighed the harms. We directly reject this. We say that the harms have outweighed the benefits, and let's tell you why. First off, on our case, we tell you that executive orders are dangerous because they cause democratic erosion and are prone to abuse. We said that they circumvent review and scrutiny, and courts rarely overturn them. Our Duncan Evidence 2010 tells us that the troubling aspect of EOs is that they bypass traditional methods of review by Congress. The courts have only overturned 2 EOs since 1789. They have proposed to act in stark dissonance from the intent of Congress and by the people. We also tell you that their gridlock argument is just a sham to centralize power in the executive branch. Our evidence from KD 15 tells us that executive power is being used not because America can't wait for congressional gridlock to be resolved, but because it is easier to make the change through executive power than through the legislative process set up in the Constitution. The impact here is clear, Judge. Presidents are using congressional gridlock as an excuse to centralize power in the executive branch and to make laws unilaterally. They're just using this as a front to make sure that they can be the only legislator at the end of the day. This is clearly dangerous because it erodes the democratic principles that this country was founded on. Now let's go on to their harms. Actually, let's respond to their C2 and C3. They talk about NATO and alliance frameworks. Or we tell you that we link into our response on contention one that consistent commitment is not through executive orders. Trump has repeatedly shown hostility towards other NATO nations and has threatened to pull out of the alliance entirely, which he can do by EO if you buy their arguments. This isn't a consistent upholding of our values with our allies and couldn't be farther from the truth. But let's go on to the harms of executive orders. First of all, talk about emergencies. They talk about EOs being very quick and decisive. However, we tell you that our Beretta and U evidence says that quick and decisive is oftentimes a bad thing. Presidents declaring national emergencies and issuing executive orders to address it creates sanctions which freeze the assets and prohibit financial transactions with any country, entity, or person. And these have resulted in deaths, poverty, and other problems for civilians. CEPR 23 tells us that a new report finds that economic sanctions harm people in target countries. 30 of these analyses found significant declines in living standards in sanctions-related countries. Also, extend that the harms of unilateral intervention. Watson and Brown 25 tells us that post 9/11 interventions in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, and Syria, due to executive action, the last time Congress has declared a war was in World War II. These have resulted in 4.5 to 4.7 million dead people in these countries and 400,000 civilians displaced, 38 million in the entire region. For these reasons, the harms clearly outweigh the benefits. Vote nay.
So I'll be taking 1 minute of your time, and time will start in 3, 2, 1. So can I just take 15 more seconds of prep time? Let me get the time. All right. So that will start in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so that was time. Opponents, were you trying to say something? Because I saw you speaking. Actually, never mind. So, I'll be beginning my rebuttal. So, quick off-time roadmap. I'll just be going down their case, in our case, and with some weighing at the end. So, time will start in 3, 2, 1, go. First up, the first contention that undermines democratic principles. But however, this and they show 9066 as an example. However, this argument is historically true but logically flawed. First, this doesn't link into today's context. EO 9066 was issued in 1942 during wartime panic, racism, and weak institutional oversight. But modern executive orders exist in a system with strong checks. The Supreme Court blocked Truman's steel seizure in Youngstown v. Slayer, and multiple courts stopped Trump's overreach, like his travel ban, but like parts of the travel ban and the Senate's order. Today, executive orders is meaningful and constrained. Second, the example is just non-unique. Legislation tools have also been abused. Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act and allowed Jim Crow laws. And the issue isn't the tool, it's how it's used. We don't eliminate laws because one is unjust. We fix the system around it. Third, we turn this. Executive orders often protect democracy when Congress fails to act. Truman's EO 9981 disintegrated the military. Johnson's EO 11246 banned employment discrimination. DAC protected immigrants stuck in legal limbo. Biden's equity EOs mandated civil rights reviews across federal agencies. We could go on and on, but you get the point. Other claim on executive orders undermine democracy. This just doesn't hold. For the third contention, democratic transparency. First, it doesn't link. Executive orders are actually published and subject to judicial review. Every EO is recorded in the Federal Register and can be challenged in court or reviewed by future administration. That's more transparent than backroom legislation deals or agency rulemaking buried in bureaucracy. Second, we turn this. EOs are often protected by democracy when Congress is stalled. Biden's EO on voting access expanded registration and ballot access. Truman and Johnson's EOs took advanced civil rights when Congress won. When partisan gridlock silences action, executive orders step in to keep democracy moving. My opponents claim that executive orders are legal uncertainty. However, Congress entering a phase of gridlock is more common than nowadays. Biden 14 states that over 75% of civil issues is subject to legal gridlock. Yes, the system is getting worse. It's because Congress become more and more ineffective by the second, emphasizing the importance of executive orders. Other claim that executive orders are legally unstable. This is misleading and flips in our favor. First, on the second contention about U.S. opponent of legal uncertainty and instability, it doesn't link. Legal challenges don't mean that executive orders are broken. They mean checks and balances are working. Of course, to block parts of Trump's immigration EO precisely because the system corrected overreach. That's not instability. That's accordingly under Trump EO against immigration. And second, we turn this because legal uncertainty exists in all branches. Congressional laws are also overturned in court. What makes EO valuable is that it allows immediate action, especially when emergencies or in deadlock. Even in Trump's EOs, flawed as they were, mobilized agencies fast. Finally, Biden's immigration and equity EOs are restored protections and clarified policy, proving that EOs aren't chaotic, the corrective tools. When laws slow, EOs act as a net benefit, and they respond to our case, saying that presidential flip-flopping, Trump fell out of the Paris Agreement is constantly changing. First, it's not a flaw in executive orders, it's a flaw in politics. Any president can reverse policy through EOs or even legislation. Trump would have pulled out of Paris regardless of how we join, EO or not. That's not a problem with polarization. That's not with the executive tool. Second, we turn this. The fact that Biden could immediately rejoin the Paris Agreement shows that executive orders are fast, flexible, and reversible. That's exactly what we need in global crisis demand urgent leadership. So now let's go into weighing. They completely drop our second contention about soft laws and soft laws and global norms, and don't let them turn this around. We tell now let's go into impact. It's 100%. So without EO-driven alignment, global process collapse. EOs keep us in touch with many industries. Beyond warrants without failing to meet SDG projects will leave 575 million people in extreme poverty by 2030. The WHO links pausing action to millions of avoidable deaths. Executive orders allows EOs to stay within these goals, and so thus this is the clear point to vote on, and it's a clear AF ballot. Don't let them turn this around, please. Thank you.
Just really quick before you guys start cross, can I call for a card that says that executive orders are very transparent and the public has access to them?
Which one in our case?
Yeah, you stated in your rebuttal just now, you said that that EOs are public and they're very transparent, and it's more transparent than other legislative processes. Could I have a card for that?
But where did I say that? It's more transparent than. I said that EOs are more transparent than other tools.
You said, I'm not sure exactly what you said, but you said our C3 doesn't link because it's the executive orders are very public and very transparent. That's what I have down on my flow, and I'm very certain you said that.
Oh, I said that legal challenges don't mean executive orders are broken. They mean checks and balances are working.
I think it was a bit before that because it was in response to our C3. Because our
No.
C3 is that they're very private.
Okay.
I mean,
On democracy transparency.
yeah.
Oh, so. Oh, I said that executive orders are public, polished, and subject to judicial review. Is that what you want?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'll send it after cross. Actually,
sounds good.
yeah, I'll send it after.
All right. Are we ready for cross?
Yeah.
Okay. Time will start in 3.
Let me set up the timer.
Okay.
So yeah.
Time will start in 3, 2, 1. Start. Since we spoke first, could I have the first question?
Yeah.
So you mentioned that Executive Order 9066 was over 80 years ago. If the resolution states on balance, then the harms have still been done. Like, what is the response to this? Like, given that that still happened and the resolution says on balance.
Well, that example's over 80 years ago, and we say that modern executive orders exist in a system with strong checks, and we give you examples like the Supreme Court blocked Truman Steel seizure in Youngstown versus Slayer, and multiple courts stop Trump's overreaches.
Yeah, but the
so
steel
like
the,
today,
the steel seizure.
executive orders.
Yeah, but the steel seizure was like 10 years after the Executive Order 9066. So that was like pretty close together, wouldn't you say? Like, so you're just saying that those checks also existed at that time, if the two events were so close together.
What? Wait. Oh,
Yeah.
well, now we can give you others like because and we tell you that EO 9066 was like it's a specific situation. It's historically standing out because EO 66 was during wartime panic, racism, and weak institutional oversight. But like modern institutions don't have that anymore.
But if the resolution is saying on balance, which means the net benefits and net harms, it still happened. Like that still happened, and that's what's relevant. Like the fact that it happened, the fact that 120,000 were incarcerated without due process, their property
Well, we
was.
also tell you that executive orders have saved a lot of lives, saved millions of lives. You can't deny that either. You can't just cherry pick one example and say that the net balance is just greater.
Wait, which one did you say saved millions of lives?
In all our contentions, like we say our impacts are in the millions for like all of the conventions.
Okay, you can have a question.
Okay, let me just paste the card that my opponent wanted in the chat first. All right, so how much time do we have left? Because my time will start. So
30 seconds. We have 30 seconds.
All right, 30 seconds. So you said that Trump pulled out of Paris Climate Agreement and the WHO, and Biden rejoined, and Trump pulled out again. So that are you saying it's often flip-flopping, and so are you basically saying that speed is not good? And at this point, are you just saying like speed of executive orders is not valuable, is not good?
We were saying that it's like anything but consistency, which was what you guys were arguing. But that's the end
No,
of
but okay.
yeah, crosses over.
Okay, judges, I don't need any prep time. Okay, so let me just get a timer. Let me give you a quick off-time roadmap. I'm gonna start on their case, try and show you why their links are overstated, why we win on the link and impact level. Then I'll move on to our case, put out some front lines, and then move on to weighing, some impact, and link weighing again. Okay, so time will begin in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so first off, starting on their C1, where they talk about fast entry into international frameworks. Well, they give you one example, which is the Paris Health Climate, and they give you another, which is the WHO. We clearly show you that this isn't consistency. The EOs are causing problems. We link into their own impact of 132 million people dying because of because of climate deaths. Because the flip flopping between EO, Trump pulls out, reinstates, Trump pulls out. All of this just causes problems. We tell you that this isn't stability. This is instability, which is the exact point which they failed to disprove in their rebuttal. We show you that this is bad. This is a very bad thing, and that the only way to actually receive good progress is through Congress. And they try and respond to this by saying Congress gridlock, but we clearly tell you with my partner's evidence that gridlock is an excuse used by the executive branch to provide even more power to the executive and the president. Next, let's move on to their contention too about global cooperation. Again, they say align with climate, which keeps things moving fast in private fields. Well, we tell you that it isn't aligned with private because of Trump pulling out of many executive orders, which causes even more problems. And then private fields aren't even related to the government. First off, second off, private fields are advancing through congressional research and congressional funding. I don't know where that they got that there's no congressional movement and the U.S. leadership in this are low, and EOs help US stay alive. We tell you EOs are not at all the only way to go about, and they're not even the best way to go about. Next, let's move on to their C3 diplomatic and global partnership. My partner's front lines go completely conceded in almost all three of their contentions. We tell you that Trump, through EOs, faced threatened partners of NATO and many other organizations, and he almost ruined diplomatic global partnerships. That's the fact of the matter. And he also, after 9/11, we give you many different impacts. We give you the military interventionism impact all over the Middle East, which caused close to 40 million deaths, which outweighs anything that they give you in this entire round. That goes clean drop. That's what we tell you. And then let's move on to our case. They try and give a couple responses by saying, oh, well, the Japanese internment was 80 years ago. The system has been fixed. Well, let me ask you, Judge, if the system has been fixed, why is Trump putting out bad EO after bad EO? Even other presidents are putting out bad EO after EO. And we show you that the courts are completely clogged, meaning that the checks and balances go down as a fact of the matter. In all of U.S.'s history, only two executive orders have been overturned by congressional action. That means that Congress is not actually stepping in. That is the fact of the matter. We give you many different examples. We give you Meinheim and Watts. We give you 9066, which they say is non-unique, but this is on balance. We tell you that if it happened, it's bad. We're not speculating. This could happen. Alliance collapse could happen. War could happen. All of these deaths could happen in the future. We show you it's on balance. These bad effects that we state, which outweigh or have already happened. We give you Trump's Biden's canceling of $400 billion in student debts, President Trump's flip-flop on immigration bans, and also DACA, which put millions at risk. And they try and obviously keep trying to say that there's reversibility is good. We prove that it's not. And then let's move on to some link weighing. We tell you that all of their links are overstated. Executive orders are not the only or the best way that are influencing global cooperation, diplomatic and global partnerships, or U.S. fast entry into international frameworks. We show you that all of these links are overstated, and our impacts are still way larger throughout the entire round. For all of these reasons, we urge a neg ballot.
I think my partner took a minute and 15. Is that correct? Okay. I'll just take like 45 seconds, and my time will begin in 3, 2, 1. Okay, that was time. And is everybody ready for summon? Okay. I'll click off tab roadmap. I'll be going over their case. I'll be frontlining. I'll go over our case. And if time prevails to the end, I will wait. Give me a second. My time will begin in 3, 2, 1. Wait, sorry, I didn't set my time. Okay, my time will begin in 3, 2, 1. Under first contention, it does not link. We respond in many ways. The internment of Japanese Americans under EO 906, sure, it was a clear abuse of executive power, but it happened in a very specific historical context, which they completely ignore. Wartime panic, racism, and weak judicial oversight. We state that today, that kind of unchecked harm could not happen in the same way. We have stronger legal standards, civil rights protection, and a judiciary that has repeatedly ruled against discriminatory executive actions, such as when courts struck down parts of Trump's travel ban and blocked his attempt to add a citizen question to the census. Out of thousands of executive orders, they pick one from over 80 years ago, claiming that that isn't representative of the modern day executive order. However, EO 906 is a clear historical outlier, not a representative case. Secondly, this argument is non-unique. If you blame executive orders for harm, then you'd have to blame any policy tool capable of being abused. Congress itself has passed harmful laws like the Chinese Exclusion Act and Jim Crow legislation. That doesn't mean legislation is inherently bad. It just means accountability matters more than a format of action. Thirdly, we turn this argument. Ironically, during the same period of time, World War II, other executive orders have massive positive impact. For example, Executive Order 8802, also issued by FDR, banned racial discrimination in the defense industry. This was a landmark moment in civil rights, predating the Civil Rights Act by over 20 years. So if Khan wants to use the World War II as a time frame, then you cannot ignore the positive impacts of executive orders during the same period as well. Even under immense national pressure, executive orders enable swift historic progress where Congress was stalled. So don't throw out the two because of one misuse. Instead, recognize the net benefit it provides, especially in crisis moments where speed and leadership matter. Next, they say that executive orders undermines democracy. However, we tell you many times that executive orders often protect democracy when Congress fails to act. Truman's EO 9981 desegregated the military. Johnson's EO 11246 banned employment discrimination. DACA protected over 800,000 people when Congress refused to act for over a decade. Biden's equity EOs mandated civil rights reviews across federal agencies. My opponents claim that executive orders causes legal uncertainty, but however, we tell you that Congress entering a phase of gridlock is more common than ever nowadays. Binder 14 states that over 75% of salient issues are subject to legislative gridlock. Congressional gridlock is not an excuse when 3/4 of congressional meetings are ending with no action. Yes, the system is getting worse because Congress is simply getting more and more ineffective by the second, emphasizing on the importance of executive orders. On a second contention, they completely drop our second war. U.S. has been able to keep up with OECD AI principles of health equity and digital assets because of executive orders. Executive orders align the U.S. with global norms and soft law, and don't let them turn this around or say otherwise, please. They want to say that EOs are not the best way to go about, but we're not going to speculate whether or not Congress will do something. We're talking about what actually happened. And what actually happened is that EOs have benefited the U.S. globally. They try to turn this around by responding to the title, not as content, not U.S. sustainable development goals or OECD AI principles, health equity, and digital access. In practice, without EO-driven alignment, global progress collapses. Even the U.S. that fails to meet SDG targets will be 175 million people in poverty. And that's way we win on probability because they drop our second war and we also outweigh on magnitude. That is why I urge an act down. Thank you.
Okay, are you guys ready for Grand Cross?
Yeah, I'm ready. Is my partner ready for Grand Cross?
Okay, time will start in 3, 2, 1, start.
Okay, so can we take the first question?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So you keep linking in about, or you say our arguments don't link because it's not modern, and you say, oh, well, this was 80 years ago, the system has gotten better. How can you say this when Trump is clearly in Trump's era, in the 9/11 era, all of these unconstitutional EOs have been passed under the same like checks and balances that you talk about?
Okay, yeah, you're ignoring all the positive ones as well.
Yeah, and
Correct. We clearly explain how the negative ones outweigh the positive ones. Like we've been explaining that throughout the round, and you failed to understand that. You're hyper fixating on one of our examples, but you fail to acknowledge many of our other examples, especially U.S. interventionism, which clearly happened not even 20 years ago.
yeah, and you also
So wait,
mentioned
what's your question?
I'm asking you like how you can state that that's not modern, and then we give you modern examples of the same thing being done.
Like over 20 years ago, is that what you said?
I also gave examples of Trump doing unconstitutional things, which is less than 5 years
we
ago.
gave you examples of Congress literally taking down and like blocking part of Trump's orders, and you
Okay, but
ignore that
that's
as well.
part of
Like you
Trump's
And we
just
also
focus
give
on the
you
negative parts.
four more examples that you don't. We tell you Truman's EO 9981 discriminate the military. We tell you Johnson's EO 11246 ban employment discrimination. We tell you DACA. We tell you Biden's equity EO. We tell you so much more. And you
Okay,
don't respond, and you're fixating on
first off, the DACA, we literally respond to. It's in our case. We tell you how this is bad because it left millions at risk because of the flip-flop from presidential EOs. Then we give you the desegregation. You provide no quantifiable evidence
That's
of
for
how
our
we
first
give
contention, not a
Wait, can I
response to your
respond to
first
that for a sec? DACA had no choice but to use executive orders because Congress stalled for over a decade. Like
But Congress
Obama wasn't even planning to use executive orders because unless Congress was delayed for a
Congress was
decade,
trying to
and
make
that
a forward
gave the
decision.
protection to the immigrants.
We tell you it's not whether Congress wasn't doing it or not. We're saying that the EO that was used to address DACA was bad and it led to bad benefits. It's not whether Congress could have done it, whether Congress was taking a long time. We're telling you that the executive order used to address DACA was bad. You guys
Didn't
can
it literally protect over 800,000 people?
No, we're
How's that
talking
bad?
we're talking about how Trump immediately reversed DACA, which left those millions
It was not immediate. It was like there was like a years of difference between
okay,
there.
but we
And
clearly give you that
if
it's
the executive order was not used, the immigrants would have been left unprotected for like years to go on.
but the revocation led to exactly that. Like he literally revoked all those protections from the prior executive order. He used an EO to revoke the previous EO. So like
And then you try and talk about checks and balances, but then you fail to respond to the point that executive orders are clogging up courts, leading to negative checks and balances, and then Congress can't
Yeah,
act
you also
because
failed to
we
respond to how
address
Congress
checks
has
and
like
balances.
over three-quarters of its meeting ending in gridlock. And
okay,
that's also time, by the way.
that's
We
time.
address checks and balances
That's
many
time.
times.
That's time. Okay.
It's time.
All right. I won't be needing any prep time. I'll begin my final focus in 3, 2, 1. Start. Judge, the most important round and the most important impact in this round is unilateral military interventionism. This goes dropped by them in all of their speeches. You have to default to this because this is the most important voting issue of the round. We say 38 million people have been displaced in the Middle East, heightened anti-American tensions in that region, and 4.7 to 4.8 million people have died as a direct result of unilateral military action due to executive order. Executive orders should be looked at by the lens of what has happened, not what will happen. They literally admit this in summary that we should only look at what benefits and harms have already happened. We tell you that these impacts have clearly materialized. All of their impacts are predictive. Don't vote for prediction. Vote for what actually happened. The resolution says on balance, you should be voting for the side that proves that either the harms outweigh or the benefits outweigh. We have clearly proven that the harms outweigh. Take our sanctions argument, which also goes dropped. It has significantly declined the standard of living in almost 30 countries. We give you the CEBD tells you that evidence backs up everything we say. We give you a quantifiable impact for these disastrous things that have occurred as a result of EOs. They go on to only refute our 9066 claim. However, that doesn't stop the fact that it actually happened. They remember, Judge, they literally admit in their summary that we should only look at what has actually happened. And that happened. 120,000 incarcerated without any due process, stripping them of their civil liberties, a gross misallocation of resources. It doesn't matter whether it would have happened anyway or if it was a result of policy. It's because the resolution says executive orders. This was a harm caused by executive orders. We have also defeated all of their consistency points because just as easily as they are implemented, executive orders are revoked, so they should not be relied on to join global frameworks. We literally tell you this, that Trump has pulled out of the WHO and Paris Agreement. This flip-flopping is anything but commitment to our allies in global frameworks. It's just flip-flopping. We can't have permanent allegiances to global frameworks if executive orders just let us repeal them. Anyways, we're living under the Trump presidency where he has pulled out of the WHO and Paris Climate Agreement, so none of their impacts can materialize for the next 4 years. We outweigh on magnitude. We say 38 million displaced. We also outweigh on scope. That's the Middle East and America. For these reasons, vote for the neg. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Was I? Sorry. Okay. Time will start in 3, 2, 1, go. Sorry, that was 10. So I'll just be going down their case, and then our case was away. Okay, so let me pull up the timer. So first, it's just gonna be their case, our case, and the wing. Okay, so it's okay. Time will start in 3, 2, 1. On the first contention, undermine democratic principles. They cite 9/11 as Japanese incident as proof of executive orders cause harm. But the first is like in today's context. 9066 was issued in 1941 during wartime panic, racism, and weak institutional oversight. They don't talk anything about this. The modern executive orders exist and system of strong checks. We give you multiple examples. Second, this example is non-unique. Legislative tools have been abused. Congress passed Chinese Exclusion Act and allowed Jim Crow laws. This issue isn't the tool, it's how it's used. You can blame any policy cue at this point. Our opponents never respond to this as well. And then talk on the second convention about legal challenges. But they don't mean executive orders are broken. They mean checks and balances are working. The courts blocked Trump's immigration EO precisely because of the EO's corrected ovaries. That's not instability, that's accountability. Our opponents stop this too. EO's protective democracy when Congress is stalled on the third contention. Biden's EO voting access expanded registration and ballot access. Truman and Johnson's EO's advanced civil rights when Congress won. The partisan gridlock sciences action. Executive orders step in when democracy is moving. Our opponents drop all of this and this. Our opponents drop all responses to this. Now, finally, this way. Our second convention is standing strong, and they never talk about this in the whole debate. It's executive orders align the U.S. global norms and soft law. Look at your flow, Judge. Do they ever respond to this? They never talk about SDG, U.S. sustainable goals. They never talk about OECD AI principles, AI, health equity, and digital access, and they never talk about G7 and OECD standards. All that are links, and we talk about in our second engine. Please don't let them get away with this. This is the clear voting point to vote on. Even if we drop response to our first and second engine, and we still win their case, and we win this case, our impact is without EO-driven alignment, global process collapse. EO gives us both in touch with many industry. The U.S. warns that failing to meet SDG projects will leave 575 million people in extreme poverty by 2030. The WHO links poverty inaction to millions of avoidable deaths. Executive orders allow the U.S. to stay in line with these goals, accelerating progress on health and poverty and education, especially when Congress wouldn't act. Judge, they completely dropped this. Our impact's on 100%. We went on probability. Judge, and look at your flaw again, because our opponents provide no impacts in their way. They provide no quantifiable impacts. We tell 575 million people in extreme poverty and millions of avoidable deaths. 100% impact, and thus we should win this debate. Please vote for the app side. Thank you.
Thank you,
Great
Judge.
round, guys.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
judges.
Great debate, guys.
Good round.
Yeah.